If you are dating or engaged, you're listening to this, you're probably like listening for like 3 things you can do to have a better marriage in the future. All right, I'm going to ask you to take that filter off, because if you're dating or engaged, there will never be an easier time for you to break up than right now.
Absolutely.
So put that on the table for just a moment and pretend that might be the best road. I'm not saying it is, but at least put that as option 1 of 5, okay? Welcome back to the Good Life Podcast, where we talk about the search for significance, the pursuit of purpose, and the challenges of our culture. I'm Carl Nichols, and I'm back with Pastor Daniel Foster, who really knocked it out of the park in our last episodes. We talked to kind of the college age, high school graduate age, and young adult age. And today I want to pick up and talk about the next season of life, which is those that are in serious relationships and or engaged.
Yeah.
And those that are newlyweds. So you've been married a year and a half now.
Year and a half.
Got a baby, and those fat cheeks of that little one, I wish sometimes I could just pinch them. And tell us what you would say to those that are engaged or newly married, or maybe just in a serious relationship. What would you, I don't know, 1 piece of advice, 2 pieces of advice, and then I'll unpack some thoughts.
That's good. First and foremost, communicate often. Mm-hmm. That's very important. And then someone told me a piece of advice that I've carried with me, and it was, sometimes you're going to feel like you're doing more than the other person, but you don't see everything that they're doing. And so there's been seasons where I'm like, I cleaned the kitchen, I did the laundry, like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, but you know what? You woke up an hour and a half before I did this morning, and you've worked all day, and you've done all this. So like, so it's easy to think like, I'm doing everything around the house, but you don't see everything that your significant other is doing.
It's funny, you laughed, and I'm sure some of your viewers are like, why is he laughing randomly? It's because you said in our first take of this, which we've never had to do at a second take of one, I don't think, maybe once or twice.
First blunder.
You said, somebody told me something I never forget, and then you couldn't remember what somebody told me.
Then I forgot.
And so you started laughing there. It's one of those things like you have it right here, and then it just goes away. As I get older, that happens more often. I think that's good. I think when you think about marriage, it's not 50-50. It's 100-100. And I think, there are times where I feel like, I've pulled 100 and Julie's pulled 20. And there's times where she feels like she's pulled 120 and I pulled 20.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of those things that you just have to work out over time. So I want to get to some bigger, what I think were like root issues behind some of those things. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things that I'm learning, I'm 44 years old in a moment of vulnerability. Let me just say this before I say anything. If you are dating or engaged, you're listening to this, you're probably like listening for like 3 things you can do to have a better marriage in the future. All right, I'm going to ask you to take that filter off, because if you're dating or engaged, there will never be an easier time for you to break up than right now.
Absolutely.
So put that on the table for just a moment and pretend that might be the best road. I'm not saying it is, but at least put that as option 1 of 5, okay? And don't assume everything we're doing is saying how to make your jacked up engaged relationship better. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need to break up. And so I just want to say that. So make sure you have the right filter on when you're listening to these things. Yeah. But what I'm learning the older I get, at 44 years old now, been with Julie this week at the time of this filming. Together, we will have been together 29 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we dated for 6 years, best friends in high school. And Julie was there at a tough season of my life. My mom had cancer, and we really got close during that. But I don't think up until the last 5 or 7 years, we've really learned as much about each other as up until this point, we didn't learn as much as we have recently. Yeah. And so I think if I could go back to dating, not like when I'm 15, I mean like seriously, I'm thinking about maybe this might be the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Or if I was engaged, and even if I was early married, and it's tough. It can get tough the early years. What are the things I would want me to say to me? Mm. And while I would not tell Julie and I to break up, which is good, I would have definitely told Julie and I to do some things differently.
Yeah.
And see some things from a different perspective, because she's a godly woman. She loves Jesus. We're best friends. There's not any reason why I think we would have had to break up. But there are some things we could have done differently. And the first thing I would simply ask before we go any further would be, do you actually know the person you're in a relationship with? And I don't mean know them. Oh yeah, they like this and they, eat Snickers. And I thought knowing Julie, and same thing with, I think the same thing could be said of her relationship with me. my definition of knowing was much more shallow than it is now. Oh yeah, I know what she likes and doesn't like, and I know what she has fun doing, and I know what makes her mad. And I don't like, do you know how they're wired? And so I'll be honest with you, for the last several years, Julie and I have been in something called temperament counseling. And the reason we first started going was after the pandemic. I just didn't know what it had done to us. And we've had small sessions of counseling and various things, but I wanted to dig deeper. And we've learned a lot about each other and about ourselves. We learned a lot about temperament prior to going in, but then this has been a deep dive into her deepest, darkest dark side and my deepest, darkest dark side, and how those things can clash. And some of the hurt that have happened in our marriage or in our relationship just came as a result of ignorance about one another. Oh, we know, we're best friends. We know each other. And I'm just going to tell you, like, we know each other as much as any couple I know. Yeah. But don't really, into me, you see the intimacy conversation, not just about sex. You can have sex without intimacy. But you could have intimacy. Also, there's a part of that, that you would definitely want sex to be a part of that. But the intimacy conversation is much deeper than the sexual act. It's into me, you see the core of who I am. And I think, so we went to temperament counseling, and we're learning, and our whole staff's doing this, learned so much about how to communicate, how to love each other, how to connect on a deeper level. And I look back and I just wish I'd known that when I was 19, 20, 22, 24. And so I would say do the hard work of knowing yourself and knowing one another. That's step one. So I would and say, okay, so know yourself and know your spouse as good as you know yourself, or know the person you're going to marry. Because here's the thing. We got one of our staff in temperament counseling, and they're engaged. And I'm like, go for it. Like, figure it out now, because I love both of them. I think it's great what God's doing in their life, and I'm excited for them. But still, even for those good people that are like, there's never a better time to break up than right now. Yeah. So, and so those are things that I'm excited for them about, because they're going to get off to the right start. And so that being said, Julie and I have done some marriage teachings across the country, and I said, so know your temperament. And the second thing I would say is deal with your trauma. So the two T's, temperament and trauma. Trauma's not everything. There are traumatic experiences that don't qualify as deep level trauma. Let's be honest. I'm talking about things that you've buried, you haven't dealt with. Maybe there's abuse, a divorce situation. There's some kind of major issue from your past that you buried. So like, deal with your trauma. Know your spouse's trauma, or the person you're engaged with trauma. Be authentic and real about that, because it will show its ugly head. And so I would say, if you're engaged, this is wild. If you're dating and you're seriously thinking about getting engaged, everybody's like, well, I want to pop the question. I want to surprise her. That is so secondary to making sure you should pop the question.
Yes, that's good.
So I would say pre-engagement counseling might be the way to go.
100%.
Because the moment you get engaged, now you start spending money on stuff, and then you're like, well, it's harder to break up. Well, wait till you have kids.
Yeah.
So like the moment somebody gets engaged, I have found this to be true. The moment someone gets engaged, I have no voice in the relationship. None. Not that I need a voice. I'm just saying people that had said they want a voice, the moment they get engaged. So I would recommend getting pre-engagement. Hey man, this is progressing. Let's go in and have a few sessions and deal with some temperament. Diagnose the problem areas and see where it leads, and spend 3 months, 6 months doing that before getting engaged. Then if it works and it's going to be then shorten the engagement process. Don't get engaged and have 2 years worth of engagement. That's dumb. I'm not saying if you've done it, there's not reasons at times, but like, engaged means like we're engaged in the process of getting married. The process don't need to be so long. Right. So all that being said, I would say know their temperament, know their trauma, and do the pre-engagement counseling. If you have not done that and you're engaged, dig into the temperament, and we can help you with that here at Relevant Church, and be a part of that. And then the trauma conversation may be something that takes a lot longer. I would not get married with unresolved trauma. I would not. At least, I'm not saying it's got to be all gone. Like, you've worked through 70% of the process, and that person's helping you navigate that, and you're going to continue the process after you get married. If you're newlyweds, it's a little different conversation. You're like, okay, we're over 2. We didn't get pre-engagement counseling. Our premarital counseling sucked, and now we're married for 2 years, and we're angry at each other. Okay, here's the thing. Start where you're at. Start before you have kids. You're like, well, we already had kids. Okay, start before your kids get old enough to don't allow the enemy to have that shame over you. I know that early in our marriage, 2000, 2001, 2002, this would have been a game changer for us. Even though we were already married, and we're like, golly, we didn't know this. Like, I wish we could learn these things then. And so now there's so many more tools and resources out there. So I would say your temperament and your trauma. Now, you guys recently started temperament counseling, because we do that for all of our staff, and our staff, wives or husbands. So just speak to that from somebody who has been married a year and a half, because you didn't have this. You didn't, all your premarital, y'all did some things right. And Krista's a counselor and some of those things going through that whole process. But still, what are you learning now that's going to help you 20 years from now?
Oh, yeah. So I completed my first 3 sessions already of the temperament counseling. Krista just did her first session this past week. And even for her, like, we've done the book. I said this, you heard that. But doing a deep dive, she's realized her temperament's a little different than what she originally thought. Yeah. And we had a conversation this past week, and she's like, it just makes so much more sense now. Kind of how I react to certain things and how I perceive things, it makes so much more sense. And so even when we communicate with each other, I mentioned the episode, I think 2 episodes ago, where we had a conversation after dinner. We were frustrated or whatever, and I had forgiven quickly. And that's just how I've always been. Wired. The next day I had my counseling session, and she's like, these are some of the things that you'll notice in yourself, and you'll forgive freely. You'll get everything quick. I'm like, that makes sense. And so now I can go to Krista and say, hey, remember when we had that, when we got frustrated? I had my phone out trying to take a picture of one of those robot sushi things. And she's like, why are you always on your phone right at dinner? I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm taking this thing. This is incredible. But it's like, fine, forget it. I'm done. I'm on my phone. Let's leave. I'm off my phone. Let's leave. And so I could go back and be like, okay, so this is how I'm wired. I get frustrated, but I'm over it in minutes. Yeah. And so that's just helped us learn how to communicate with each other, how to resolve conflict. I even hate using the word conflict because they're so small.
You challenge one another.
Yes.
Hey, your dark side's coming out. Mm-hmm. Hey, you're holding on to something. Yeah, yeah.
And we do that. We're like, hey, it's a nudge. Like, hey, here's a guardrail, and I just want you to be careful because
So what's crazy about this is what I'm learning is, if you don't know the person, you don't create a safe space for them. That's been a game changer for me. I'm a bold, primarily choleric. And well, let's talk about temperament for new listeners. Temperament is before your personality. It's the way you were born, the way you're wired, and then that's nature, your natural inclinations to respond to things in certain situations. On top of that, you have your nurture, how you were raised. So if you come from a 2-parent home, single-parent home, you had an abusive father, those are going to develop and have effects on your personality. So at the core of who I am, though, I'm a choleric in most situations, but there's 3 components. I have my social component, I have my drive and control component, and then I have my closest emotional side. Well, I'm choleric on a lot of things, dominant, but on an emotional side with my family, I am not that way, but I've been perceived as that way. You see what I'm saying? And Julie is a little more phlegmatic and various things in her core. I didn't see her as that. She never came off as that to me. I didn't understand. And so because I'm a certain way in our relationship, she's a certain way, I just thought everybody was the same, should be the same way. That's what cholerics do, right? Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it's helped me to understand, when I said that, here's how it played out in her mind. And it didn't seem safe. And I'm like, it was not unsafe. It was how it was perceived and how it was obvious. So I just tell that to say, like, 20 years of like this stuff would have been helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would just simply say, like, know them. And here's what you're going to learn. If you do a pre-engagement, and be like, I don't know, I'm ready for this. You're going to see some, it's okay. But you're both going to get whole in the process. Yeah. And so that's what I would say.
And we're different in the sense that early on in our dating relationship, we did go through the book. So we did kind of unpack some of our temperaments, even if they were a little different now. But like, we were able to unpack that. We did do pre-engagement counseling. We sat down, we had 6 sessions with the counselor and kind of unpacked a lot of things and some trauma and stuff. And so that combined has just been so helpful and beneficial to us and in our relationship.
I'm learning more and more, and I've always said this, but I'm more convinced than ever before. I think couples need counseling all the time, at least every 2 or 3 years, 5 years at the most. And I think, Julie and I'll stay on regular checkups once a month at least, probably for the rest of our lives. And just because I think it's so beneficial, it's challenging. Sometimes a third party can help you just kind of, like, I want to have significance. Like, I want, like, I do. I mean, like, things are, our life is good. There's so many great, incredible things that God has done. But like, I'm still only 44. I hope I have 44 more years with her. Yeah. And so I think that's the thing that, like, and I'm growing as a person. I'm able to help other people. And so, yeah, man, it's been vital to understand myself and understand her and vice versa. And then also, if you're not careful, you'll pre-impose things from your childhood and other relationships onto that person that's not fair to them, but if you knew them, you might not do it.
Yeah.
And so That's huge. The second thing I would say is if you're in a serious relationship, engaged or newly married, find a mentor couple that is not one stage ahead of you. They're still figuring it out. That's 2 or 3 stages ahead of you. So if you're 23 years old and you're married, find somebody in their mid-30s or 40s that have been through some stuff, that have made some mistakes, but that you look at and go, if I'm in my mid-40s and my life's going like that, I'll be doing pretty good. Yeah. Not somebody that's like, hey, I know you've been married 6 months. Tell me what happened on that. Like, that's stupid. Yeah. That's just dumb. And I know we do that because we don't want real accountability. We want...
It makes us feel like we have accountability. Yeah. There's no real accountability.
Look, they're going through the same thing we are. Okay, well, let's just find... Misery loves company, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would say find a mentor couple and like literally just say, hey, look, don't ask them to be mentors. Just be... And I've had this. We have somebody on our staff who's done this with us recently. Said, hey, we just want to come out and ask y'all some questions. Mm-hmm. And they came out and they said, say whatever you want. And we, through that, developed a relationship with them that at any time there's issues or anytime we want to, sometimes we play pickleball with them. Sometimes they just throw up on us and tell us because they're in a new season of life as a couple and various things. And it's just been really, really cool. It doesn't feel like a mentorship. It feels like we're friends. Yeah. And they're, 15 years younger than us, maybe. So that's what I would say. And then the last thing, and we'll spend more time in the next episode on this one, is this. All things financial. So here's a couple thoughts. Get on a budget now and don't attempt to live at the same standard your parents do. Like quit. Your parents worked 30 years to get there. Stop it. Just get on a budget. Eat beans and rice, whatever you got to do. Take your, meal prep stuff to lunch. Don't go out to eat just live on a budget. We'll talk more about that. I would say educate yourself on saving and investing. We'll talk about more of that in the next episode. I would also say educate yourself on real estate. Oh my goodness, real estate. There are some pretty fast ways to make money, and you might be at some point in your life, if you know when to strike and how to strike, it might be very beneficial for you. So those are important things, but not just real estate on like making money, like even your own personal house. Yeah. Lending options, debt to income ratios, all of those types of things are important. Understanding, types of loans and whether, your house is in an area that's appreciated. There's all kind of stuff in there. So we'll talk about that. I'll close with this. I think this is incredible. I have a kid at our church. He came in here as a teenager. He's now a young adult. If I mentioned his name, you know who I was talking about. He floats around here doing stuff all the time on Sunday mornings. People are like, oh my gosh, he'll do anything. Went on a missions trip this past year with his mom. I walk in Sunday and he's putting out the speakers outside. And he goes, hey, I need to talk to you today. And I said, about what? He said, finances. I was like, I love it. I love this. And I'm like, okay, we probably can't get all this in on a Sunday. Sure. I said, find me before you leave. And so, dude, he was standing at the next steps room after second service with his mom. He said, I'm getting paid $1,250 next week in my first job. He's working. Yeah. Wow. So he's creating habits. Yeah. All the things we talk about. And he goes, I just need to know what to do with my money. He came straight to me. And I was like, all right. So I gave him 3 things to go home and look up. Familiarize yourself with your company's 401k or matching, because I know where he works. I said, I want you to look at what a Roth IRA is, and I want you to look up interest rates on short-term CDs for the next year. Yep. Just look those things up. You go to the homework, come back to me. Mm-hmm. And so, I love it. This kid is doing the right things now. Yeah. And if you 2 or 3 years ago, it was like, I don't know, man. This kid's all over the place. I'm not sure. Dude, he's laser focused in on creating a life for himself.
Creating habits now that's supporting the life that he wants.
So it is possible, wherever you're at, do the right things. And we'll talk about finances in the next episode. I'll share some things that we've learned along the way, some mistakes we made, but we'll talk about real estate. We'll talk about Roths. We'll talk about 401ks and 403bs and insurance. We'll keep it short, but I'll give you some snapshots. Wherever you're at in life, you could be in your 50s. Still, we'll talk about some things that make a difference. So, hey, like and subscribe. And let us know some topics you'd like to hear about. We're getting close to the end of this particular season, and we'll wrap it up for the summer here shortly, and then we'll circle back in the fall with season number 2. So like and share on all platforms. We'll see you next time on the Good Life Podcast.